Good evening, everybody. It's Mark. Welcome to Facebook Live. I thought what I would do this evening is spend 5 or 10 minutes explaining how transcendental meditation differs from other types of meditation and mindfulness. Seems to be the most pressing question when people come for an introduction, because there's a lot of practices and apps and guided meditations on YouTube and yoga and Buddhism and Vipassana, so many different approaches, techniques, traditions, practices. And so what I can do is just explain where transcendental meditation sits compared to different types. And the easiest way to do it is to, instead of go into lots of different types, we'll put them into categories, and then we can kind of go into the mechanics of how each one differs. So the first category of meditation, which is one that I kind of came across when I was a child, basically, is what you might consider as a concentration type. And this is when you are concentrating on some object or perception or even a thought. But the mechanic is the same in that you are trying to keep your attention on that particular object. And the one I remember was it was a book, a Roald Dahl book, where it was a story about a guy who went to India and trained under a yogi and stared at a candle flame. That was his practice. That was his meditation, candle flame gazing. Now that's a concentration, because I'm trying to keep my attention on one place. Concentration is, by definition, requires a degree of effort, because you're having to hold the mind in one place. It tends to want to be free, and if we're holding it in one place, it requires some effort, a degree of effort, a degree of trying. That's concentration. The second type is contemplative types. And this is when meaning is involved. And when meaning is involved, the mind associates. That's what it does. If we know the language, then any concept or word has a meaning to us, and then the mind jumps on an association. Different types of meditation may work differently, but if there's a meaning, then the mind goes along with that meaning. So who am I is a classic self-inquiry practice, and that requires meaning. What is love? What is God? These kind of contemplative types. Now, even a guided meditation may be seen to exist in this category, because a guided one requires you to know the meaning. So if you're listening to an app or a YouTube video where there's a speaking of some sort, it's helping you sleep or relax, then that could be put into the category of guided meditation. Whenever the mind is involved in meaning, it keeps active. Different types of activity, could be very busy, but still activity, because that's what we mean by that's what meaning does. It keeps the mind associating and therefore active. So concentration keeps the mind in one place on some sort of object. Contemplation keeps the mind active, moving around wherever the meaning is going. mindfulness is could be seen as a jack of all trades, because some mindfulness approaches maybe fall more into the concentration. For example, Vipassana. I'm not a Vipassana teacher, but this idea of scanning the body could fall into concentration if one is trying to stay on a particular place, or it could fall into more of the mindfulness type. Now, mindfulness is paying attention on purpose. Now, paying attention on purpose could fall into concentration, like I said. You try to stay on that thing, or it could be more into the kind of less hard type, where we're just paying attention, and if the mind wanders off, you bring it back to whatever you're paying attention to, whether that's the scanning of the body, my breathing, even my thinking, my walking, my eating, whatever I'm being mindful of. Paying attention on purpose. Less effort than pure concentration techniques. Still some degree of activity. So we have concentration, most effort. Mindfulness types, less effort, but still some degree. Contemplative, activity. So these three categories. Transcendental meditation is in its own category because it's about transcending. Surprise. Transcend means go beyond. What do we go beyond? Thought. Thought is activity in the mind. And when we do transcendental meditation, that is a technique whose purpose is to create an inner environment, or rather a situation whereby the mind can become less active and transcend. That means cease thinking. So the consciousness comes to rest, i.e. our attention transcends thought. Now that's different from any of the other three. And the mechanics is very different as well. Because in a way, when we practice transcendental meditation, our attention is coming inwards. It's coming home. Home means our consciousness at rest, our mind at rest. I'm using these two as interchangeably just for the sake of simplicity. When thinking comes to rest, i.e. ceases, what remains is consciousness, silent and awake. Transcendental consciousness. Actually, we'll call it pure consciousness, better word. Consciousness, pure consciousness means consciousness without fluctuations. At rest, awake, alert. This is what we mean by when we transcend. It means consciousness has gone beyond thought, gone beyond the activity of thought. And that is coming home, because it's our essential nature before activity of the mind starts. So if you think of your attention in concentration is on some object. In contemplation, it's on some meaning. Even if it's very subtle, its meaning means activity. If we are mindful, then there's still some object. It's a thought, a walking, hearing something, the body, a perception. There's still an object. Transcendental meditation we're coming back to the subject. This is the difference. Any objects, it's not really, we are almost, you could say, retiring into the subject, what I am, my essential nature at rest, which is the subject, the experiencer, rather than what is experienced. So that's the fundamental difference, is coming back to the self. Rather than trying to do something on the level of objects, we're coming back to the subject, returning home, coming home. So it's a different direction of where the attention is going. Hence, transcend means come beyond thought, come home, come back to our true self. So that's the simplest way to explain the difference in the mechanics. They just work differently, and some are harder than others. For sure, transcendental meditation is easy because it's easy to come back to yourself. No effort required. Effortless. So easy, for sure. Not hard. For sure. If you take away one thing, that would be it. That transcendental meditation is easy because we are working, going with the mind, coming home. So I'll stop there so we can leave it nice and simple, because that was the title of the talk. If you have any questions or comments or reflections, please type them in now. And if you're watching this not live, like later, feel free to type them in, and I can always answer them in another video.